Gatekeep always, or the leeches will get into your hobby and they will do the only thing they know how to do: destroy it. Which is exactly what is currently happening with Dungeons and Dragons. Now, to be fair, D&D and Wizards of the Coast in general are long lost. And we're also beginning to see the early stages of destruction with Paizo and Pathfinder as well. Seeing as in a video just this week, I showed you how Paizo decided to bend the knee to one freelancer who had a problem with slavery and its representation in their game, and so he demanded that because he had a problem, everybody else could not play with that mechanic. They couldn't free the slaves, they couldn't fight the evil slave owners, and they couldn't engage with that part of the world at all. And Paizo agreed. And now they're going to remove it entirely for no reason. No in-game reason, no explanation, no lord pitch as to how this happened. It will suddenly just disappear. Because again, leeches can only ever destroy. They can never create. And this is an excerpt of the various things that have been ripped out of D&D recently. The Beholders have had a massive chunk of their lore removed, the Giants as well, Gnolls, Kobolds, Mind Flayers, Orcs have had a tremendous amount of their lore removed, as has the Yuan Ti. And the worst part is, most of this, you can barely even tell why. Mind Flayers. Mind Flayers are inhuman monsters that typically exist as a part of a collective colony mind. Yet Illithids aren't drones to an elder brain, each has a brilliant mind, personality, and motivation of its own. Okay, it's an evil psychopathic monster creature. What's the problem here? That it's inhumane? I mean, it's literally inhumane in that it is not a human being. Part of a collective colony, I'd think that would speak to the communists, if anything. Perhaps that is brilliant. That's rather ableist, isn't it? The Beholders, too. I was like, okay, the Beholders are in constant fear of its safety, wary of any creature that isn't one of its minions. It's aggressive, it has a superiority complex, and what? Each Beholder think it's the epitome of its race? What? Are you worried that the white supremacists will look at this and go, ah, yes, the Beholders, the OG neo-Nazis? It's a joke. Everyone knows it's a joke. It's ludicrous. It's absurdity. But remember, to the leeches, nothing is absurd. Everything is 100% serious. And everything must be viewed through the lens of modern day politics. In case you're unaware, by the way, Volo's is this right here, Volo's Guide to Monsters. It is intended to be a big old rulebook and fluff book combined, where there are both extensive rules for various creatures, their stat lines, and their special abilities, and also a ton of lore and fluff surrounding them, their habits, their mindsets, their societies, etc, etc. It's actually a really cool concept, and it's the kind of books I kinda wish 40k would still be making, because back in the glory days, 40k and Warhammer both would put out massive fluff books. I cannot cease gushing enough about the Liber Chaotica. I have read that damn thing until the covering fell off, because it's just a fantastic fluff book. But the problem is, of course, when you begin to despise your own fluff, it's gonna start getting mighty difficult to write fluff books now, isn't it? And obviously, this has been covered universally positively by the mainstream gaming press, who sees this as exactly what it is, yet more politically aligned bullshit. Wizards of the Coast continue to excise potentially problematic content from Dungeons & Dragons book to address issues of system racism. System racism. It's not just systematic racism, this is system racism. How precisely can a fluff book about fantasy monsters inflict its system racism on the real world? It can't. It obviously can't. And the entire argument is pure lunacy. We already kind of discussed this in the previous video, but just to repeat myself here, this is the situation we're currently in, right? A tiny minority, primarily made up of racial ideologues, as they constantly have to talk about their race and their color and what was the one in the last video? Their black voices. The dehumanification, the removal of the person and the reduction to nothing more than skin color. These people, I have to believe, are the most minute sliver of the actual community, and they are enforcing their will upon everyone else. That's the situation we are in. It is the tyranny of the absolute minority. The minority says, one person says, you know what, my fifis are hurt at the mention of fantasy racism in a fantasy world with fantasy slavery, and therefore nobody else who has, you know, the capabilities of recognizing fantasy for fantasy, I suppose, are allowed to play with this. It reminds me of the panics of like the of the 90s when people were like, oh no, action movies, they'll damage the kids' brains. They won't be able to understand that this is a movie. That was roundly laughed at back then, but looking at the modern day panics, maybe some people actually literally couldn't tell there was a goddamn movie. If they get so immersed in Dungeons & Dragons that they start seeing the fantasy slavery as a problem, I'm starting to see the argument, frankly. And let me just address the other giant false flag in the room as well here. The full change list is too extensive to address in its entirety. That's a great point as well. It's like, oh, they've ruined so much of the setting, we can't even list it effectively anymore. But the general purpose remains mostly the same throughout. It could be said that changes are unnecessary and doing nothing but remove content lore from the game. Oh, it couldn't just be said, it is the literal observable reality of the case. But it is important to remember that not everyone might feel that way. I love this too. Some people might not feel that way. They don't even know themselves. Even the apologists for this are like, well, there might be some really retarded people out there with mental brain damage that can't differentiate reality from fiction. I mean, we don't know, but they might exist somewhere. But it's important to remember, if making changes like this allows even a very small number of Dungeons & Dragons to feel safer or more comfortable with the content in the game, it should at least be considered as worthwhile. Why? Why? Why actually, genuinely why? Why should the safety, first of all, the safety from a fantasy setting, the safety from a book, which you have to actively purchase, mind you, why should this group's safety, or more precisely as you put it, comfort, be put ahead of tens of thousands of other people, mentally sane people, who recognize fantasy for what it is, who recognize the literal villains for being villains? That's the thing too. It's not like D&D has like a woke take on slavery and it's like, yes, you know what? Slavery is rather based. Owning other people as chattel is spot on. No, the villains are the ones who own slaves. The cities in which slavery is legal are the evil cities. The cities that have entire adventures written around the hero characters coming in and freeing the slaves, defeating the villains, and overthrowing the tyrants. We have arrived at a point now where saying slavery is bad is not acceptable because of the simple mention of the word slavery. Now, amusingly enough, this is leading us to the same point that saw, Hassan Piker and Vosh, other pro-censor ideologues getting kicked off Twitch for using, am I allowed to say it on YouTube anymore? For using the word cracker. And the best part is, this is entirely a problem of their own goddamn creation. This wasn't an issue. None of this was a problem. None of these racial slurs were an issue. You could say whatever the goddamn hell you wanted. And if people didn't like it, they simply wouldn't watch you. Nice and easy. But now that you've created an overly censorious and unfathomably sensitive group of people that will lash out and get you hit and banned for literally anything, weirdly enough, it turns out that is indeed a double-edged sword. Now, I'm sure they haven't already been reversed because, again, these people are on the correct side of the political spectrum and are so allowed to use whatever racial slurs they want, like Hispanics or Latinx, for example. Latinx, I should start using Latinx because I know it pisses off quite a few people. By the way, Latinx is absolutely a racial slur, so I probably shouldn't on YouTube. It'd be a little bit risque after all. And this is where we're heading with Dungeons & Dragons. Hell, well, that's not where we're heading, that is where we are at. Where even if you have slavery be the evil that is to be defeated, you still cannot have it, because some people will literally just see the word and be reduced to a twitching mess of misfiring neurons and an abject example of how thoroughly our society has failed the weakest and most mentally deficient among us. Gatekeep. Always. Every single solitary time. And on that note as well, I want to give a special shout out to the Battletech community, which has done a fantastic job of this so far. We've been posting various stuff over on our Battletech. Stuff for our Battletech reimagined setting, which is run mainly by Kyle, but I've added a lot of images to it as well, a couple of ones I'll bring up on screen here. The first one we posted, there was a lot of outrage from people who had never posted on the Reddit ever. And what did the mods do? They simply responded to them, "Hey there, I see you haven't posted here ever before, but you are posting remarkably heavy on Sig Marxism. Perhaps you ought to, take a hike, buddy." Perfect response. The second time we posted, they got shut up awfully quickly, and the third time, they were purged completely. Not a single whiny commie in sight. That is how you do it. You gotta get rid of these political ideologues right off the bat, or you are doomed. Simple as. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.